Just want to let her. So again, welcome everybody. We're going to get started now. We're going to talk about present levels. So the present levels of academic and functional performance. If you look at the annotated copy or your child's IEP, the annotated copy is page 13, and your child's IEP, you can pull that out and take a look at section 2 of the IEP. So it's right towards the beginning. So the present levels of academic and functional performance are known as PLAFP, PLAAFP. Sometimes you'll hear them referred to as just present levels, or the PLOP, or the PL, but they're formally to include both academic and functional performance per IDEA regulations. And that's in IDEA section 300.320, where you can find these requirements if you wanted to refer to the Federal Register or the IDEA documents themselves. This is a really important area of the IEP because it's the basis and the foundation of your IEP. It drives the IEP. It drives all the different sections that come after it. So it's a really important part of the IEP. So you're going to want to really look closely at this. It's developed by the team. So all input is essential in this area, and it should include input from all members. And accuracy is really important in this area. It should include both the strengths and the needs. It's strengths and needs based of the student. It should not be solely focused on one or the other. And decision based on the present levels is where this decision is made, whether to begin, continue, eliminate, or add a support in the IEP. So these are the areas of the present level section and what should be included in there. So one is going to be academic. So that is going to include your most recent evaluation information at the minimum. Your most recent evaluation reports. It's going to include any kind of assessments that you were done and progress against the curriculum and any progress monitoring if it's an ongoing IEP, not an initial one. It's also going to look at functional, and functional could be anything, any area of functional every day. It's not limited in IDEA to any specific areas. It's just a general functional. So that could include a lot of different things. And for example, I just listed here, behavioral, social, and activities of daily living, known as ADLs. Also include any progress in this area or any kind of data related to functional performance. Go back there. Also in this present levels, any kind of transitional information if the student is age 14 or up or turning 14 during that IEP. So any kind of present levels towards those transitional goals would be included. Again, parental concerns, which we bring up all the time at our advocacy presentations, is very important as you are an equal member of the team. So we're actually having a whole other training next month on important parental areas of the IEP. And just make sure that you know that it doesn't have to be a summary. It could be exactly what your concerns are verbatim entered into the present levels. Any information on accessing the general education curriculum, strengths and needs, and if you're not a native English speaking individual, then how that impacts your performance and your present levels should be included. So both academic and functional areas of present levels should be very comprehensive. They are a summary, but they should include a lot of information. It shouldn't just be one little paragraph. And it should not be copied and pasted year to year. It's supposed to be present and what's occurring right now. All areas of performance should be included. It should be across day to day, across the different environments of the school, not just what's going on at that one particular time that they spend in the special education classroom. It's supposed to be across all environments. Again, it drives and develops the goals, the specially designed instruction, and the related services of the IEP. So that's why it really needs to be very comprehensive, because this present levels is what's going to help with those areas. Baseline data should be included in the present levels for developing the IEP, and that should be the specific, it should be measurable, and it should be objective. It should also include any progress monitoring, if that's applicable, should be in the present level section. If it's an IEP that it's not a brand new IEP, it's going ongoing development. So any kind of progress monitoring that would be completed from the last quarter or the last year should be included. It must be data driven. So, and that means that when we talk about data, it should be objective and it should be specific. So it's going to contain details about any assessments that have been used to determine your child's achievement or their academic progress, or how they're, functioning throughout the school system. It's going to talk about the standards that were used and how your child rank is against the norms of that, the standards and the norms for a child at that age. It's going to detail how your child accesses their school community and how they're involved. And it's going to talk about problem solving, how they process information, how they their whole school day looks across different areas in different environments, what they're doing now, and how accurate it is. If it's not able to be something that can be determined, it should be noted in there as well. So how are the academic areas of the present levels measured? So the question is going to be in this area is, how is a student achieving against the in the general education curriculum? So how are they achieving in reading, writing, math, or related subjects? And that could be science, any reading, writing, and math go across all different subject areas. And they're gonna talk about compare to peers of their similar age, and also the state standards. Going to look at the strategies and the interventions that are currently being used at the present time. And again, you may need this in the transition section of the IEP. The present levels may reference transition, because at that age of 14, you're going to be looking at post-secondary and employment opportunities and options and goals for the future. In the functional area, how things should be measured would be like classroom performance. Functional assessments may be looked at in this area, such as a functional behavior assessment, if behavior is a concern, independent living skills, other kinds of rating skills. All those assessments used to measure functional performance should be listed and explained in the present levels. Functional skills, here are just some things that can be included. Again, under IDA, it's not a specific list or anything. So if it's any kind of activity throughout the individual's day, or even outside of the scope of the school day, because independent living is part of the requirement of educational. So you can look at emotional issues, emotional regulation, daily living skills, community-based skills, how things generalize or transfer to the community, behavior, safety, navigating the school, even with like physical, related to physical, communication, executive functioning, and even medical. And there's many other areas that compromise functional. So if it's a concern that you'd like to see looked at closer, then that should be evaluated and included in the present levels. Again, sometimes there's not a concern in a functional level. So the student is doing fine in a lot of these different areas. So it's strictly the academic area if they're having a difficulty with. But that should still be documented in the present levels, that, if there's no concern, but at least that it was looked at. And then also, again, you may need this transition related areas covered as well in the functional, especially when it comes to independent, like if you have independent living goal, and that could encompass a lot of different things, for stuff like self-advocacy, budgeting, nutrition, learning to drive. Like there's a lot of different things that are related to independent living that aren't always considered, but if that's a concern, it could be something that could be addressed, and information should be included in the present levels. A little more breakdown of the other areas of the present levels. Just again, we're going to have the next session talking about parental concerns. But just keep in mind that what is your main area of concern for enhancing your students' education? So there should always be something. There's nothing. This never should be blank. As advocates here at the ARC, we sometimes get IEPs and the parental concerns are blank, or it says parent has no concerns at this time. But if you think long and hard about your child or their education and where you'd like to see them in the future, you're always going to have some kind of, it doesn't have to be a negative thing when you say a concern. It just could mean something that you want to see them at, something where you see them in the future, something you'd like to see them embrace or work, build on their strength. It's something for enhancing their, their education. Strengths and needs. They should report accurately, reflecting your child in these strengths and needs. And if there's anything missing, you as an equal member of the team should bring that up. It shouldn't just be, the strengths are, just the academic things like counting and writing, or the same thing with the needs. It shouldn't just be those academic pieces, because we know that IEP is not just for academic reasons. Again, talking about how the student accesses the general education curriculum. So even if your child is a full-time special education student, they're still supposed to have accessing this general education curriculum through modifications and adjustments. It's still an area that is still supposed to be addressed. But it's talking about how does their disability affect their involvement in the general education. So that should be explained quite thoroughly in the present levels. And how is your child's measurement against the state standards? So no matter where your student is accessing in the location, they still should have access to the general education requirements. So every child can have that opportunity. Again, transition age students. We at the ARC here have a lot of cases of transition age students and some lacking areas where it's just general and not specific in the present levels or the goals or the activities. So as your child's approaching that age, or even prior to that, if you have ideas where you'd like to see them in the future or what their goals would like to be, it's never too early to bring that up or think about that. And the English proficiency should definitely be addressed. Often there may be someone that's, a child that is speaking English, but also speaks another language, or the primary language at home may be different from the school environment. So anything that's impacting with language should be included in the present levels. Okay, so here are some of the present level questions to consider as you are the parent, and some things to maybe think about. What are your child's strengths? So that could be in the terms of a lot of different things. So it's just, for example, like your child may be, very social, very outgoing, or your child may be really willing to try new things. It could be they have strength in letter identification and their reading skills are really strong. Or they social and they like to go to activities and be involved. So just think outside of not just the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, but as your child as a whole person, what their strengths are, because you really want to build on their strengths in the IEP, and that could help develop some of the needs. So ask yourself, why is this a strength for my student? Like, do they enjoy this activity? That's why it's a strength. It's built their confidence in the past. It's translated to other areas. So just think about that why. And where does my student thrive? So where the strength for my student is in a small class. It's a one-on-one. It's with the general education peers because, they model them and they build off those relationships. So think about where your students' strengths are developed best. And then ask, how does my student learn the best? Do they learn by repetition? Do they learn by having a visual? Do they learn by modeling what another student is doing? So if your child models other people's behavior and there's a lot of negative behavior, then maybe that that is not the right placement for them. And their strength is modeling, so you want to have them with positive role models. So, and who does my student respond best to? And that could be personality wise, an upbeat positive person, or somebody that is more direct and firm and leaves things very simple instruction wise. Do they have a positive relationship that helps build up their strengths, like a certain teacher or a counselor that's really helped develop their strengths? So look at the strengths and needs of your child under these WH questions is really important when you're gathering information and having these IEP meetings. Not to just brush over the present levels and just fly through, oh, this is the testing we had, this is where we're at. There should be a really in-depth and comprehensive section. And then ask yourself the same questions about their needs. The needs should not just need to be in one area. So what are my child's needs? Are they struggling with writing, for example? Do they have, people have difficulty understanding their speech and they get frustrated? Does my child understand social boundaries? Like, are they standing too close or interrupting? Just remember to look across all the different areas where they may have a need. But why is this a need for my students? They need to make progress at school and generalize into the community for independent living, or they need this skill in order to successfully move to a post-secondary education. And where can my students' needs be met? So again, we always say, the disability does not drive the placement. So where can my students' needs be met? It's not an all or none. General education for this subject, where I may need a special education learning support class for this subject. Or I think they would do better in a one-on-one speech, or they maybe do better in a group speech. So where can their needs be met? And how can my students' needs be addressed? So what accommodations and things help them? So practicing certain words, maybe a social skills group, some kind of adaptive technology is how my students' needs can be addressed. And who can help my child meet these needs? Would it be a special education teacher, a social worker, a nurse, an OT, SLP? So when you're thinking about these needs, think about them in these contexts. So when they list the needs on the IEP and the strengths, you really want to look closely at these areas, because anything that has a need will need to get addressed in the IEP, and any area that has a strength can help solve the need. So this is it's a continuance of how to prepare, for using these present levels. So, read through the evaluation reports ahead of any meeting. So if your child was recently evaluated, or even if you recently got, say, progress monitoring, or, you didn't have a full evaluation, but you had one testing done or an achievement test or something, make sure you read through those evaluation reports, highlight, make any kind of copy or notes that you like to do ahead of time, so you understand things a little bit better. Same thing with any kind of feedback or information you got for your student before the IEP meeting. Just make sure that you're looking at that closely. Type, or write up positive points to include in the present levels in your parental areas of concern, to focus on the strengths. Listen to the summary when they go through the present levels. Listen to that summary that's given, and then add any input or ask any questions as you go through it at the meeting. If there's an area of need, again, you should have a corresponding goal, a service, excuse me, and or an accommodation modification. So if it's an area of need, it should be addressed in the IEP. There's no limit on goals. Like, if sometimes you go on IEP and they say, oh, well, we're only going to have 2 goals in speech, or we can only have 2 goals related to this area. There's really no limit on goals. Not that you need to have 50, and that could be harder to keep track of, but there's no limit that if you have a need, then should have a corresponding goal, or at least an accommodation or service related to that. And there could be goals in areas like executive functioning, or anxiety related, or social skills. if there's that need and you really want to track closely to see how they're going to make progress, a lot of times we go into IEP meetings and they say, well, we're just going to add that to the SDIs. Well, if it's something that you're really concerned about and you really want them to see if they're going to improve in that area of need, if you don't have the goal, how are you going to monitor and see if it's working and they're improving or doing better? There's a lot of different services available. They're outside the standard services. There's a whole list of different related services that are options. A district can't come back and say, we don't do that here, or our school doesn't offer that. And extracurriculars also need to be supported. So they could be supported if they have a need to want to participate with their peers and they need support in order to do that. We want to make sure that that's included in the IEP as well. And consider how inclusive practices can be implemented for your child. So a student doesn't have to be able to do what everyone else in the class is able to do to be included in the general education class. Like there's a lot of modifications that can be done. They don't have to be doing exactly the same thing, and they can still benefit from that inclusion. And that's what the modifications and the supports are for. So just, try to think about how you could think outside the box in terms of having your child included to the greatest extent possible. And use your voice for your child. The power of parents. Parents have been the ones to make so many of the instrumental changes, the fundamental changes in the community throughout, in the disability world throughout the years. So you know your child best, and everyone else, it can be intimidating. They are the experts, and you're not claiming to be the teacher, the psychologist, the therapist, but don't be afraid to speak up because you know your child best, and you have ideas about what you think would work best for them, and please bring those to the table. And now I'm going to have time for questions because I know we fly pretty quickly through all this information, and that's why we do the recording. And we're trying to break down each section of the IEP so that you can understand it better and be more prepared for your meetings. But if we thank you for attending, participating today, and we're available. ARC advocacy in 7 counties up in northeastern Pennsylvania. Excuse me. Here's our contact information. If you're not from our area, we can certainly connect you with advocates or organizations throughout Pennsylvania. We collaborate with a lot of different groups. There's a lot of valuable information available out on websites such as IRIS, PACER, the Parent Hub, Patent and Peel, and so many different resources out there that have some great information on present levels and all different sections of the IEP. But now we'll stop the recording and allow you guys to, if anybody would like to ask any questions or just have any further discussion. Thank you again.
Can you hear me?
Yes.